So much damage has been done in the name of religion. And it worries me that we have a new religion in which potentially, and it seems to be happening all over the place, that a lot of damage is being done and going to be done in a massive way. Now, let me just say there's a big difference, I think, between religion and faith. And religion is something, in my mind, and you may beg to differ, of course, it's more of an organised thing. People get together and they follow a doctrine, if you like, whereas faith is much more personal, down to the individual. And sometimes they're in harmony, of course, and sometimes the juxtaposition is against each other. Somebody very kindly, one of my viewers, sent me a report, I think it was for the UK, based on, and if I've got this right, the public haven't generally seen it. It's not been publicised. I think that's right, but if I got that wrong, please forgive me. And it was a report that is there to go to government bodies, to the public, to the private sector, to big business and places like that. And the idea is, instead of net zero, it's absolute zero. In other words, that by 2030, we should be in a position in which, this was the aspiration of this document, that we would be in a position where every industry was generating no CO2 whatsoever. And we're talking about, of course, the religion of man-made global warming and how industry and man-made industry and the way that we live today is affecting the planet by warming it up. And of course, the religion is we have to do something about it because the world's going to end if we don't. We all know, we all heard this stuff. And so in the report, there was a whole number of things. I made a little list of these sectors, I suppose, that had to try and work out how to get round this. So the electricity supply to everybody, in the houses, to big business and all the rest of it, had by 2030 got to get rid of anything to do with fossil fuels, and that way of producing electricity to run business. It all had to be somehow electric through presumably solar, wind and nuclear. Construction. So the construction of anything, buildings, factories, that kind of thing, again, all had to be made from electricity and not rely on the generation of that electricity from fossil fuels. The steel industry, of course, steel extremely important, but at the moment, as far as I understand it, we use a lot of coal, fossil fuels or gas, natural gas or whatever, to be able to heat steel up, to melt it, to change it into the shapes and to produce it in the first place, and then to mould it into whatever shapes we want. That will all have to be turned into using renewables to generate the electricity for that. Same with the cement industry. Cement, of course, comes, as if I've got this correct, from chalk and lime. And again, you need a process of heating it up, which of course could be used using fossil fuels quite economically. But now we have to do that using electricity, which again comes from these renewables. Mining for any of the precious metals that we require for all sorts of things, from our laptops to the lithium batteries, of course. Rail, trains, a lot of trains do run on electricity, but any of the diesel trains would have to be scrapped, and we've got to just have those on electricity. Same with road vehicles, and we know how we're being pushed in towards road vehicles, and presumably cars would have to come down in price. I mean, they would have to be manufactured at a price that people can afford to switch to them, although maybe the idea is that they are so expensive that nobody can afford them. I understand that Royal Mail, which is an important business, sending letters, not just personal letters, but business communications and parcels across the nation, and potentially to aeroplanes and overseas and things. I understand that they're looking at replacing their fleet, and I suppose this is replicated with any other large company that has a fleet of vehicles. And and they would all have to be electric. So the prices would have to come down, because I watched a video of a chap looking at the Royal Mail, and he said, basically, looking at the current prices of these vehicles that they are thinking of replacing them with, the cost to replace them and to run them with batteries, which are very expensive for electric cars, and also the distance that they could do. So you're stymied by how many journeys you can do. You can't just fill it up when it's empty. You have to, well, you can, but it takes time, whereas you normally just go to a filling station and put in your diesel and away you go. And anyway, he said essentially it would bankrupt the company to actually do this if they did it. And why would a company even bother to do that unless they knew they were going to be winding it down? And why would they want to be winding it down? No business would willingly wind down their business for no reason. He couldn't understand it, and neither could I, to be honest. International freight, of course, and we're talking container ships that bring in all those goodies and things that we need from across the world on these great big ships and these big metal boxes that contain all the stuff, you know, all the stuff that's made in China, that we still need because we can't seem to make it ourselves any cheaper. That would all have to be on electric and not fossil fuels. Aviation, aeroplanes, of course, anything to do with the fossil fuel industry. Travel, which could be cars, coaches and trains and everything. Tourism. Food, of course, and agriculture. Food from anything to do with I suppose the growing, the combine harvesters, the drilling machines to actually plant the seeds, and any kind of harvesting, the packaging machines, the processing machines, and the whole factory stuff. All of this whole thing in 7 years. This report says it's all got to be absolute zero, which you just think is absolute nonsense. It couldn't possibly be without really damaging the economy, the people's health, their jobs and everything else. And it just seems that this religion, that we've got to do this, is a bad religion. I mean, it just seems, it's impossible. And then further in the same report, it was saying that when you get to 2050, and I wonder if I shall be alive, be in my 90s, I think, by that point, but my grandchildren won't. They'll be well and truly, you know, they'll be around. But when we get to that point, it's the potential of things like cars will have to be got rid of. There won't be any aeroplanes. I dare say the people in charge, they'll be able to fly in their private jets, but the rest of us won't be able to fly in aeroplanes. They probably get rid of those. So many of the leisure and tourism industries will be extinct, or forcibly extinct. Now, I say that this is the religion. And the thing about all of this decision making, all of this policy making across the world, and this is the UK, and our CO2 footprint is 1% compared to other countries. Just 1%. And we're prepared, it seems. People are drawing up contingency plans of this is what we should do and this is what we will do, and you've got no choice in the matter. Which is all very strange. All of this is based on the fact that man-made global warming is a thing, and that CO2 is a bad gas. Carbon. I mean, we are a carbon-based life form. We need carbon. Plants particularly need carbon. I just don't understand the mentality that if you reduce the carbon from the atmosphere, you're basically saying we will let the plants go extinct, trees will die out. I can't see that that's a good thing. Now, but then, you know, people like David Attenborough will come on, and he is a guru and to be believed, and we all accept what he says. Well, not all of us, of course. Some of us are a little sceptical. And I'm just saying, what if the science is wrong? What if this religion isn't true? I'm not saying it is, you know, before the powers that be come and clamp down on me and say, oh, you're putting out disinformation. I'm saying, what if? Let's just follow this thought. What if this global warming thing isn't actually a thing. I know everybody's telling us that it is, and I know most of my viewers, by the comments I get, actually also are saying, what if it isn't? Perhaps they don't even believe it. Perhaps they think it's, dare I say, a hoax. I'm just saying, what if it isn't true? What if we are making a huge mistake? And the reason I say that is we've just gone through a pandemic. We've gone through this process, whether it was manipulated on purpose by a small bunch of people who are pulling the strings, or whether we just panicked and we saw other countries do the lockdown business and go, oh, blimey, they've locked down. I tell you what, we'll lock down as well. I don't want to be the one that doesn't lock down and everybody dies. And because we're in an age of mass communication and easy communication, everybody could see what everybody else is doing, and perhaps just mass hysteria from all the people in charge. I'm not saying this happened. I'm not saying it didn't happen. But one plausible explanation is why everybody sort of followed suit, apart from places like Sweden and Florida, is that they panicked and they didn't want the people in charge, just didn't want to be the ones to gamble with people's lives. And you can go, okay, that's quite laudable, fair enough. Everybody panicked. But they kept telling us it was the science. We had to do this because the science told us. And now we know that lockdowns was not a sensible policy. It was a mad policy. It's done us more bad than good. And if we'd done as the Great Barrington Declaration had said and looked after the vulnerable, maybe locked them down and the people with core morbidities, and kept the industry open and kept commercial ventures going and everything going, we wouldn't be in the dreadful situation that we're in now, with all the mental health issues, with people who have got all sorts of other problems because they couldn't go to hospital. Basically, we followed a science, and any question about what if that was the right science, maybe there was another way of approaching the pandemic, we were shut down. People were saying, no, it's this way or no way. So we've done that. And the lesson we've learned from that wasn't a good idea to have one science, one view, one way of doing it. Clearly, you need different ways of doing it, different ideas, thinking about it more. And so my concern is this religion that man-made global warming is as dreadful a catastrophe as it's made out is true. What if it isn't? That's what I'm saying. What if it isn't? Because we're making all these contingencies. We're putting ourselves back into the Stone Age. We're cutting people's civil liberties. We're what's the word I'm looking for? Constricting business. We're causing much chaos and mayhem and worry and panic in our younger members of society, when perhaps, and it's a big perhaps, it isn't a thing. It isn't necessary to do this. I can't help feeling, though, that the people in power, the governments around the world, they also have thought, what if? And maybe they've thought, it isn't as panicky as they think. Maybe there is another reason that they want to try and herd us into different areas and try and control the population a little bit more. I don't know. But I'm just saying, what if this isn't right? And maybe we need to have that argument. I get very nervous when people start shutting down a conversation. When a friend, and I've had viewers, long-term viewers I got on with, I thought were friends, and I would say, do you know, I'm not really convinced about global warming. They suddenly think I'm an idiot, and they've lost their friendship, they've gone away. Like that. Everything else that we've agreed on has been fine. Then suddenly this one thing had atomized them, and they could not accept that I was a human being even because I had a difference of opinion. What kind of a world have we got into where we're in that? And I'm saying we need to continue the debate. The science is not fixed. It's not certain. What if all these decisions are being made that are going to affect people? if the core thing that all of this is based on is wrong, they may not, and I know many of my viewers believe it not to be true, they may not be right. And we've got to keep arguing and saying, what about the other side of the argument?